guys. How is everybody today? Today is September 1st. It is our town hall, and had a little bit of an issue before as we were coming on. I know we're a couple of minutes late, and I apologize for that. I'm freakishly obsessed with beginning on time. Now, when I see I have my voted sticker on, today's also Massachusetts primary. So hopefully everybody had a chance to vote either in person or by mail-in ballot. To say what a good son I am, I'll pat myself on the back, even though my mother and I have very different political beliefs and are on opposite sides of the spectrum. I still brought her mail-in ballot and helped her fill it out as she wished. Um, um, yeah, so that's why I'm such a good son, because I could have just not done that, but I did. Welcome everybody. It's good to be here. And today is our town hall. Did I already say that? This afternoon's busy because we're getting ready for a sort of a subset of a board meeting this afternoon. We're going to be hosting this in person and also online, kind of a hybrid model. We're going to be hosting this behind our home office in Woburn in the tent that we've erected back there that will be in our space adjacent to Jubilee Park until November, I think they said the date was, and I know there are a few people well, I think mostly everybody is excited to be there and said they're excited. We'll be doing our official board meeting on September 22nd and doing the same thing in that case. Again, doing a hybrid model. My feeling is that given the fact that we are in the process of opening our day programs for our clients and their families and our staff, and our pledge has been to ensure the safety of these very important stakeholders as they trust us to return to the space, that we should expect nothing less for our board members and other sort of regular meetings that we have. And so that is what we're doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person this evening. So that's going to be great. We are going to talk today about continuing along the theme of reopening and all the different details that we're taking into consideration. Today we're going to look at a subset of our planning, and that being related to the transportation and how we're going to get people into the space. So in a few minutes, I'm going to ask Greg to bring Joe Lahiff on, but first we're going to go to the numbers. The data that we've been routinely examining during our time together on these Tuesdays. And currently, we are now at 9,060 deaths in Massachusetts and 129,000 confirmed cases in the Commonwealth. This represents an increase of 111 people dead from last week, and the previous week it had been 107. So we're keeping right around those levels. In the United States, we are now at a staggering 183,000 people dead due to COVID-19. Just over 6 million people have been tested positive. The deaths of 183,000 represents an increase of 6,000 from the previous week, and it had been 7,000 the week before that. And globally, we're at 848,000 deaths, confirmed cases of 25.3 million worldwide. That's an increase of 34,000 this past week, and the previous week it had been at 41,000. These numbers are so big. I often try to find ways to help us kind of understand them. But what I was thinking about this past week is going back in time, and if we look at when we started to use this format for looking at the numbers, if you go back to May 14th, it was big in the news at the time because we'd gone through the threshold of 100,000. We were at 102 back on May 14th, and we couldn't believe that this many people had died of COVID-19. If you go to June 30th, you'll see an increase to 128,000. Moving on then to July 7th, it was 132,000, 143 on July 20th, and then moving forward, we hit another major marker of 150,000, crossed that barrier on August 6th. Moving on then to August 11th, 163, on it going up just in huge numbers to 177 on August 18th, and until today's total of 183,000, with many people now saying almost certainly that we will cross the 200,000 count by the end of the year for sure, of people dying from COVID-19. So if you had asked me back, we started doing this in May, I think I probably wouldn't have been able to believe it really, but this is what we have. So in Massachusetts, we're still fortunate to be looking at 4 of the 6 guiding indicators as being representing a positive trend. We talked about how that went from 3 to 4 last week over the previous week. So this is good news. And we're continuing to look at this on a regular basis to kind of monitor where we are in relation to, as far as our actions that we're taking to try to return to some sort of normal patterns and rhythms. And we're able to do that in a safe way because of the fact that these numbers are that the data supports it, and that we're still seeing the green status indicators, which means positive trend. The yellows being the in process. Last week we looked at the positivity rate in Massachusetts of being about 1.4. We like that. That's a good low number, and so we're watching it very carefully. So much of what we do is dependent on this. This week we're at 1.3. So we've gone down, ticked down a fraction of a point, which is the right direction to be going in for sure. We are now at looking at the fact that we've had now several weeks of many more people in the building. And when I say many more, I mean a fraction of what we once had. But I think all of us were just watching it warily as we started to see some very welcome and familiar faces returning to the space. When we first opened, and as some more families have made decisions to have their children, their loved ones return to some sort of a formal programming. It still is eerie to walk through the space and to see so few people there, even in some of our craziest weather where we maybe opened and just very few people came in, blizzards or hurricanes or things in the past. This still pales in comparison to some of those very low numbers. But this is why we are now turning our sights to transportation. NuPath has historically done transportation for a large number of people. In fact, if I ever mentioned, especially if it's locally to somebody where I work, what I do, or that I'm associated with NuPath, people are most likely to know who we are by our beautiful vehicles that are seen on the roads and throughout the cities and towns, all through Middlesex County and Essex County. And the man behind that, helping us get these vehicles moving around in normal circumstances, is Mr. Joe Leif, who is our oversees all of the transportation, our asset manager. I was trying to think of your director of asset management. I was trying to think of your title, even though I made it up. I should know it. Joe Leif, are you on mute, or can we hear you?
I don't think so. I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you are. It is good to see you.
Great to see you. Great to be seen.
I was when we were thinking about asking somebody to come on as a guest, because nobody wants to hear me talk as much as I do. And Dan Lannon happened to mention that you were really in the thick of things for helping us, thinking about the necessary, how we're retrofitting some of our vehicles, how we're trying to create these systems so that we're making sure that they're clean properly and so on. I jumped at the chance to have you on because I think you were one of the only remaining Club 50 legacy member that we've not yet heard from. So for those of you who are watching that know what this means that you, Joe, have been a member of this elite group, Club 50, since we ever started doing it. So you never missed a single year. And I was looking over the data, and I should say that you've been employed. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you worked for us now for 5 years and 10 months. I can't believe it's been 5 years. We'll talk on that in a minute. But as far as your participation in an activity with fundraising, you've raised just over $9,000, 9,140 to be exact, over all the years that you've been doing this since 2015, and that is just spectacular. Who knew you were such a great fundraiser, right?
I'm not sure, but people just, I think, give me money to make me go away.
Well, hey, however you get it, I just don't care. At this point, we'll take whatever we can get. Um, Thank you for being here, by the way. And I want to tell the story about how we met. I think you'd like that story too, but you had reached out to me because you felt you had some expertise related to a kind of a situation that we were going through. This was very shortly after I took over, I think, as CEO, and we kind of had this conversation, but then we decided to get together, and I think it was right before a major blizzard or a major event, and I think I said to you, well, I'm in the office anyway, and if you don't mind coming in, and we didn't even have the walkways shoveled or anything, and if I recall, you walked in with up in drifts up to your knees.
Followed in your footsteps, Dan.
Oh, were there footsteps?
Footsteps.
Well, at least I was able to do that for you. I couldn't shovel for you, but at least you could walk in the holes that I'd made. And we sat that day and we talked for I think well over an hour, and just really connected on a number of very important sort of philosophical levels. You were looking for work after essentially, being in a position to kind of be home for your kids when they were in high school, and so, and then you were looking, and your wife, Kelly, who works as a nurse in one of our programs, has been a long-time employee of ours, and that's kind of how you found out about us, and how you
Absolutely.
approached. So
Yeah,
you've been with us ever since. This is
it's been an amazing ride, and I was retired for almost 5 years from the police department, and then I fell in love with this place. It took all of a night to fall in love with this place. Came in here, met some of the people, and just, it was over. I don't want to go anywhere else.
And so then we put you in kind of in charge of helping us manage our sort of our general assets, and how we are, doing things in a way that makes the most financial sense, and the best systems and so on. So you've done a variety of things for us, but now you are and you've been overseeing our fleet of vehicles. How many vans do we have currently, or how large is our fleet now? What are we looking at?
Total fleet number is 55, with most of them
55
being 55 vehicles and a wide assortment of them, from sedans all the way up to big 15-passenger vans, and most of them being at the houses.
I could hardly keep track of my own one vehicle getting the registration, the oils changed and everything, but this is all part of what you have to do, isn't it? It involves a lot, as well as all of the necessary training for the drivers, the credentialing, the certifications, everything that goes into it. We subcontract through MART, which is sort of pays for the transportation for many of our folks, especially if they're connected to our day habs. And so without our fleet, without our transportation, without your skilled workforce of drivers and monitors that sort of knew all the routines, I often would joke with, well, not joke even, but when I had the occasion to meet with your team, or to do any kind of training for your crew, I would always remind them that in many cases, it's the driver, the monitor that greets that parent in the morning and picks up the client in the morning for the day, and the one that returns him or her safely to the family at the end of the day, that are by far the most important in some ways as far as a linkage to our program. So this is not a kind of a a sort of an extra sort of service that's put on the side around the edges. This is a fundamentally significant part of our business model, because so many of your people are transported in. If we don't get them in, even if families really want them to return and are not able for whatever reason to transport their child in, it really limits how many people we can get in here, whether we want to or not. We're just not able to get the numbers in. Talk to us about what you've been doing, and sort of the process, and thinking about how do we begin to bring in some transportation and to help those that want to return come back to work.
Sure. So when it all hit, and it was as sudden for the day programs as it was for us, we shut everything down. Most of the vans, the large number of them, the ones that we use, not the house vans, but the ones the transportation uses, we were able to negotiate a deal with our insurance company to take them out of service completely, disconnecting the battery and making sure they were out of service, and the registration plates were taken off. Saved us a bunch of money. The last month or so, since we knew we were going to be coming back in some sort of fashion, we've been ramping them back up again. And it's not just me. Human resources has been fantastic. Elder's been awesome. Anytime I need help, I mean, everybody jumps in. Ken gave me a ride yesterday over to pick up a vehicle at the Martinson. So it's not just me. I want to make sure they all get thanked.
Mm-hmm.
But
Good.
we've got the vans all up to speed and inspected and making sure that they're safe for just regular operations. And we segueing into making sure they're safe for Corona transportation. And our funding source, MART, is very strict. We've got a large contract with them. It's very lengthy and very difficult to read. And then even for me, who considers myself a contract junkie, it's a tough contract to negotiate. But they've added on to it, making sure that there are protocols for cleaning after each and every use, that there are protocols for how many can be transported in a van, and even that we have a barrier between the driver and the main seating area inside the vans. So we're in the process now of making sure that's all up to speed, and we're almost ready.
So you mentioned MART regulation, and MART is sort of notorious for the number of regulations that they have in place to, it's a good thing. It's most of it is designed to protect the safety and the well-being of the passengers that are being transported. In the best of times, can you give us an example of some of the restrictions or the regulations that MART has? It has to do with the testing, drug testing of staff, of drivers. It has to do with the vehicles themselves. They can't be more than 5 years old. There's a whole array. And now with COVID-19, it must just be layers and layers and layers of additional regulation and restriction. Talk to us about what some of that looks like, in a practical way.
There are meat and potatoes things that we can discuss forever, as what size vans you can use, what style, how old they can be, what shape they have to be in. They have to pass certain inspections, including a safety inspection above and beyond what the state requires. So we are very careful to make sure that our vans are all well within the age range of what they need to be for used and upkept extremely well. But MART adds into its contracts, as you referenced, the safety being number one for the clients we're transporting, details such as having a vehicle empty sign on the back. And they'll come along and they'll inspect that to make sure it's turned properly. They frequently and randomly send inspectors out to each property, not just NuPath, or any one of the three of ours. They'll send them out to every single provider that is in business out there. So
and I've been known to inspect some of them myself, knowing not inspect them, but I've noticed if the sign's not correct. That's the one thing that I've noticed that sometimes gets forgotten.
I'm going to phrase this right. I get a lot of support with making sure I'm notified about the signs being turned correctly.
Well, it takes a village, right? It takes a village.
Thank you very much. And I wish I could turn my camera just so you know me and the way I run things. I have a sign on the back of my door to my office that every one of the drivers can see that has, "Were you warned about your sign?" And the last time that you were warned about your sign, it's hanging on my desk, my door right now. So the drivers, if you get over 3 times, you're going to get a written warning. The 4th time you get suspended. It kept it way down. It really helped me with the transportation department.
And a lot of people may not know this. This is an aside from the whole pandemic conversation, but the reason those signs were instituted is because of a tragic event. There's been several, and across the country, you'd be surprised at how many times there was examples of a driver getting back to the lot at the end of the day, parking the van, and then at some later point finding out that one of the people they'd been transporting maybe had fallen asleep on one of the bench seats at the back, and then were left there until a parent started calling saying, "Oh, my son or daughter didn't come home," and in some cases being left in vehicles that were overheated and didn't have enough air to to survive for long periods of time. Now, we never had anything like that really happen to us, but it's designed so that the driver has to go to the very back of the vehicle upon beginning the route in the morning to say this van is now in use, and as they're driving around, and then as they return to the yard, they go to say this van is now empty and turn it, and that way they see all the seats as they go to the back, and if anybody were sleeping, just because you just hear terrible stories about parents who left a child, you know, in a car seat in the back, and you know,
We
through some.
we took it to another level with, especially with the transportation department. We have the driver's initial every time they do a trip. Did you do a van empty inspection? And the van empty inspection, the sign is just a sign. It doesn't really matter. The sign can be turned correctly and still have somebody in it. Did
Yeah.
you do your inspection? And
Yeah,
that's
but
something we'll
we're still
continue
dealing with people, and people that are flawed, and you know, you can have the best intentions. This is just another layer. So that's a good example of something that Mark's been requiring us to do for a very long time. But now there's a whole bunch of additional things. Start with capacity. Talk to us about how this is affecting the capacity of a typical vehicle that you might run on a daily basis.
So when we contracted, Mark, to give you a little bit of perspective, we typically shot and bid for big routes that were 10 to 12 people, and we'd use a 15-passenger van, basing the funding on the route, on that capacity, and on the mileage and the maintenance and the salary for the driver, et cetera. We're down now to the state has allowed us to do 2 people in a 15-passenger van, at 3, including the driver. They've said if you have a minivan, you can, with 3 rows, you can do 2 passengers in that. None of the minivans that we have 3 rows, and I'm not familiar with any that do actually.
I was just gonna say, it's not really a minivan, is it? If it's got 3 rows.
My old car was a Ford Expedition. It had that 3rd row, so it's got to be as long and as big as that to have 3 rows.
Yeah.
But so we're sticking with the large vans. We've got enough of them around so that we can start doing that. And MARTA's easing back into transportation, returning some of the routes that we had before the shutdown, which is a great sign.
So, so how does it work logistically? If before you were able to transport 12 people all at once, you know, it would take you longer to go around and pick them all up. Now you can only use it for 2. Are you just doing many more runs, or how is that? How are you even coming close to approximating what a normal run would look like?
Right now, we have a lot of this comes from March, so I don't have some of the behind the scenes state mind process behind how they put it together. They've given us 5 routes. All of them have 2 people on them. So, and they're allowing us to double run if we can make that mathematically work. So I'll give you an example. We have several runs that are 55, 60 minutes in total. They're long routes. They can't really be doubled up. We have one route that they gave us that takes 22 minutes to do the first 2 people and 30 minutes to do the second 2 people. So what we'll do in that case is we'll have the driver pick up those first 2, transport them to program, then return and pick up the second 2 and transport them to program, same at the end of the day. That's something that's very new. MART would never allow us to do that, but
What's the restriction on that? What's the reason why? Is it because of the people, most of the start times for programs are 9 to 3, or is that why? So Dan told us a week or 2 ago that we were kind of relaxing some of the you know, expectation about what time people could begin to arrive and start to receive services. It could be earlier in some cases, but I think he really only talked about a half hour or so sort of spread. Is that still what we're trying to aim for? I mean, we're not going to be starting anybody at 6 a.m.
No,
you know,
that's what I would ideally shoot for is to get that first, and I'll have to work with Elder and James and the team to make sure that this works for the programs. I'd like to get that first group in here maybe 10 or 15 minutes early, and then the second group would only be 15, 20 minutes late for program. That would be ideal. Not exactly sure. It's going to need some tests and trial and error, but if for that doubled up route, that would be ideal for me.
You know, I think the challenges that you're facing in some ways kind of exemplify why this COVID-19 pandemic has been so challenging for so much in the business world, you know, restaurants and you think about, you know, the kids, you know, as they think about returning to school or having a hybrid model. There's so many things that there's additional restrictions placed, or additional, you know, processes, cleaning, all of this, and none of that comes cheaply. So in order to continue to operate, and sometimes in some ways you're spending more money to do it. So if you're doing 2 runs, let's say, even if you, on the best circumstance, you've got that you're going to do 2, flip, go out, do another 2, you're still only accomplishing 4 people out of what maybe was the 12-passenger van before. So you're only at about what's that 30 percent or some 33% of what you had been before, and yet you're probably spending just about as much, if not more in some ways, to operate that vehicle. Then you add in the cleaning that has to happen, the electric static, you know, sort of, you know, sprayers that go in and mist everything. so this is what we're trying to do, but it's not cheap, is it?
It's not cheap, no. And where it's causing discussions that are ongoing about who we had furloughed our transportation staff. We need help. We're going to need help to do these transportation routes. So we're trying to sort through who can drive what. We're in good shape. It's not all difficult news. Mark was remarkably flexible for our club groups, the groups that are coming from our homes. They're allowing all of them to travel together in the same van. So as long as they're coming from the house together, that was an easy win for us. That's a large group of people coming back to program, which is nice. It's the ones that are outside that don't live in one of our houses that we're really making the concerted effort to get back here.
Mm-hmm. There's a, you mentioned that idea of if there's 5 people, as is the case in many of our autism programs, residential programs, they live together, they're together, pretty much all the time. And if there's a sense that like almost like a family unit that, when you and Kelly go out, you're not worried about being, at least I don't think you are worried about being 6 feet distant from her. I don't think that would work very well with Kelly.
There are times when I'm worried about being 6 feet.
Yeah, maybe there are times that you are 6 feet apart, but generally speaking,
faster and stronger than I am.
yeah, but so in that circumstances, you're fairly certain of one another's, sort of COVID negative status, and so therefore it's a risk you're willing to take. So in these circumstances, if these 5 folks are going to be transported together, what the kind of the wild card is that when that happens, though, once they set foot either that out in the community someplace or in this program, then the question becomes, well, are they exposed to many more sources of potential COVID virus that they would not otherwise have if they were, just contained within the home unit? In fact, we've got a number of residential agencies, that being organizations where some of our work attendees live that are not part of NuPath, that maybe have decided to keep people home because they don't want the exposure that comes with, when these folks leave their care and their supervision and enter that, scary big world. And so there's many reasons why, we're not able to even think of a time, well, before a vaccine or some period of time when we got this thing sort of licked, or at least, controlled better than it is now. It may be quite a while before we're able to even approach something looking like full capacity, don't you think? Because of the
it's going to be a process, no question. Just safety being the number one thing for everyone. I can see slow incremental increases in the number of people allowed on a van, but it's going to be a process. It's going to take time.
The education community is currently facing, and you've got kids in college, so you may have found some of this. You're writing the check for the tuition, and then you're finding that your kid is just working from an apartment, or hopefully not your house. I think you purposely moved it to a smaller house than.
Yes, I did.
You mind if I tell that story? Or no, maybe I should.
Tell that. That's a great story.
So for any parents out there that have kids that are college age, I think this man here had this great idea that the minute your last kid was in high school, or did he get
senior in high school? The other 2 were in college. He's a senior.
You sold your home in Lexington that had been the family home, and you and Kelly moved into a very small substitute that really didn't have. So your children that were in college didn't have their own rooms when they came back. They'd have to sleep in an ironing room, or or a guest room that was not comfortable. And your whole thing was like, hey, I don't even want to give them the option. We just don't have the space. Hey, I think that's very smart. You're teaching your kids to spread their wings.
My daughter's got an apartment. My son John's got an apartment, so it worked.
So, families, if you're in a similar situation, you may want to consider that. It could be a very good idea. But so I was saying that as educators are trying to sort of predict what's going to be happening and how this is all going to look and how it's all going to work. We're putting ourselves out there in some ways, because you're not knowing what's going to happen with the virus, in a month, in 3 months. I was on a call earlier today, and the regional director for DDS was talking about the surge, or this increase in cases and deaths that almost as a, it sounded like it had taken a turn, like a shift that it was, if it doesn't happen, people will be very surprised if they don't see a really big spike in the fall. And so I think that's what everybody's bracing for. But now you're running around, you're trying to get drivers maybe to come back from furlough, their furlough. We're investing money in putting these dividers up, plexiglass. I think that's something you're doing. Is that right? Are
We're putting dividers up, but it's thin plastic. It's not a full plexiglass. So
Sure,
it's
sure,
a
but
little
still,
bit more.
it's all of it. You know, nothing happened. I doubt there's anybody running around there saying, if you want me to do this for free, I'm gonna, I'd be happy to
I haven't
retrofit you.
found that person yet, but I'll find one if I
So,
can.
so I mean, this whole thing, in fact, has created this cottage industry for a lot of, sort of strange, things that are happening that now all of a sudden there's a need for somebody to go around and putting shields up in 12 passenger vans. You never would have thought that a year ago. But so we're investing this money in building the infrastructure to continue to have some sort of portion of our business model intact and continuing to provide a very much needed service for a wide community of people, and trying to, sort of triage like who needs it the most and how can we help families that don't have alternate, ways to care for their children if they're both working, both husband and wife are working, or whatever the case may be. And then not even knowing whether or not the data is going to support us being able to continue to do this, because once we see that spike, if that happens, that stuff's going to be shut down almost immediately, especially if there is a causal relationship that could be made as to, well, as soon as the transportation started, we saw this increase. Just as when the day programs began to open for business, it was watched very carefully for the first few weeks, because any kind of, a significant shift in the trend towards the negative was going to probably respond in curtailing anything that we've done. So this has got to feel almost like a, I don't know what, like it's a risk. I mean, what else can we do? But
And we'll have eyes on us. The Mart is going to be sending inspectors around to make sure that not just us, there's a lot of other companies, independent companies that should be held at the same bar. And Mart is, I think, going to try to hold them all to the same bar. So, we're doing our thing, but we expect everybody else to do theirs too.
well, we like that, don't we? Because I mean, we know what we know about our own dutiful sort of, participation and adherence to the guidelines. Some of the transportation companies, they're smaller, kind of mom and pop shops. Sometimes you see them show up. You're like, are they really being held to the same standards? Because if they are delivering somebody to our doorstep and they have not been as rigorous or as, sort of ethically, complying with, with guidelines, that's exposing all of us to their, lack of oversight or lack of adherence. And
We're like every other department in NuPath. I take a lot of pride in what we do. And I've seen people that for one reason or another have moved, have changed residences, have to go to another transportation company. And this isn't NuPath transportation. It's not my driver. Where's Peter? Where's Eric? Where's, the 20-year employee? We've got 20-year employees, 25-year employees in transportation here. So it's a matter of pride and making sure that people are comfortable and safe. It's something we're looking forward to doing again.
something that you've seen in the, school bus drivers and other, large sort of system-wide transportation companies, is that many of the drivers tend to be kind of I'm trying to think, like, retirement or post-retirement, or that may fall into a more vulnerable sort of, subset of the population. So this is another thing that I'm sure that you're trying to balance, that, some of your best drivers also tend to fall into a category of a person that maybe is of a, above of a certain age, that they may be, in theory, more susceptible. So that adds another element, really. Have you had enough drivers that have just out and out said no, you don't think that they're going to come back, or you don't know that yet? Maybe it's too early to tell.
I haven't had anybody saying no yet. I've had drivers saying, when can I come back? A lot of staff want to come back, and I find, the one I just mentioned, Eric, wants to come back. And you've known Eric a lot longer than I have. He's as dedicated a NuPath employee as I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's for sure. You probably heard me say this if you're watching in the town halls, but I said, whatever happens, what's happened up till now and whatever we have that we don't know yet, as we go into the fall, it's not our vehicles or our commercial space or even our physical houses that define who NuPath is, because lots of organizations have nice programs and nice houses, and they have nice commercial space. It's the employees that do the work each and every day, and I think that is what therein lies that kind of the character, the ethos, that sort of who we are as an organization. So I'm happy to hear that many of those drivers that really were furloughed early on, they were they've not been working for us for a while, that they're still there and wanting to come back as soon as they're needed. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So if families are watching this today and they say, well, I really want to be part of this next wave if I only had transportation, would you say that somebody's already reached out to them in all likelihood, or should they reach out to somebody if they don't know, or what?
The way they've been coming to me so far has been through program staff. So Elder has really been my primary contact. He'll get a list of people that have passed. I think NuPath is doing a check of, do you want to come back? Or have you had incidents? Some kind of a sheet that people have to answer all the questions to before they're brought back in. And I think these people that we're about to start transporting have all answered affirmatively or correctly to those questions. I would say Elder is probably the best contact I could offer. Certainly James would be able to help as well. Brian Calnan up in Westford, I'm not sure what he's doing. It must be the same, I assume, as Elder, but those three people I turn to.
Okay. As we close, and thank you, of course, for coming on and being here today. I mentioned earlier that that people will often say that they know NuPath through our vehicles, see them on the road. Several years ago, we began the project of having our vans wrapped, vinyl wrapping. So we have these beautiful graphics. I think they're beautiful, and so they're very distinctive when you see them. But in a way, I think that is it's a positive sort of rather than just seeing these white vans that I'd see that were just mostly covered with. Not because they weren't washed, but just because they get dirty in the winter and everything. We decided to use it as a space to kind of try to, promote NuPath in a positive way that had a positive impact. And I think that's a big reason why people remember seeing them. On the back of the vehicles is a quote that I attribute to you because you are a J.R. Tolkien fan. Huge. And a lot of people wouldn't know that. To know you, I wouldn't just automatically assume that you're, Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and all of these things. But you told us of a Tolkien quote that we have put on the backs of our vehicles that I just love. Would you tell us what about that?
Test me. The road is behind, your journey is ahead, or something along those lines. I'm great. I knew you were going to do this, and I can't get it now.
You can't remember it? I should have it like out in front of me. I thought you would remember it. You will if I just keep talking. The road behind the home is behind home. Something about home.
Behind, the journey is ahead. That's right. That's it.
Home is behind, the journey ahead, and so people see this, and I love that because it's in this sort of at the time now home is where most of us are all the time, no matter what we want. But at the time, it was this I thought just motivating quote that kind of reflected this idea that we're going to leave the safety and the comforts of home, and we're trying to have high expectations. We're trying to promote every opportunity and give our people the tools they need, including transportation, in order to break out into the world, and to take new risks and to experience themselves in new dimensions and all of that. And I love that.
You had done that without telling me. I was stunned when I saw it, almost to tears. I loved it as soon as I saw it, and I think I came in and I said, how did you remember that?
So now if you don't mind, what I'd like you to do is change it all, just scratch it off, and just could you have instead COVID sucks.
COVID sucks. I can get behind that.
Oh my goodness. It's just every time you turn around, you take something that was already complex, and COVID makes it like infinitely more complex with layers and layers and layers of additional things.
if I can keep you one more second, you've got amazing people here fighting the fight. You
Yeah,
truly do. There are amazing people here that you get input, you get ideas from, you get support from, places you never thought before. And some of the miracles that the executive team is doing, I don't mean to be a brown nose, working with Dan Lannon and watching how many gears that man has is insane.
I
He
know.
switches gears, and sorry,
And
Dan, I know you're probably listening.
you're right. You're 100% right. And I probably don't say it nearly often enough, but we are so indebted to so many staff that have just done their job, risen to the occasion, reported for duty, just been there through it all. In such a powerful way that it's humbling, really, to be part of a team and a kind of and an energy that's as palpable as what I think people still feel. And what I've been pleased about is that while so many organizations have really been fighting this kind of um, I don't know what sort of almost this disintegration of kind of organizational, sort of, identity, as they've been, sort of relegated to, this distance, working and virtual working and teams that aren't actually meeting anymore. It's all Zoom, and that there is this real risk, and a lot of organizations I think have felt it, where they're just lacking any kind of that kind of that thing, that the magic that made the movie work. I haven't seen that or felt that. If anything, I feel like, at least for a very important backbone, a core, a cohort of the organization, the people that are participating in the town halls, the unity forums. And by the way, we're talking about staff here, but we've got many families that have been absolutely incredible, and we're not for their inputs and their encouragement and ideas that we've gotten from them, and that we couldn't do everything that we've been doing and been as successful with it, because it really does take everybody kind of doing what they need to be doing, even down to a parent whose child maybe isn't feeling well some morning, to like canceling transportation, not sending the kid in, because we don't know, and by wearing the mask, helping their kid learn to wear the mask. These are all things that are going to help us all, and will help us comply with the guidance that's been set forth by the Commonwealth, the CDC, and DPH. So a lot of things to keep track of. I'm sure glad that we have you to help us do that, not just for transportation, but any number of responsibilities that we have. And I thank you very much, Joe, for being here, for being a part of this magnificent kind of response that we've had, and I can trust you to make sure that you're doing everything, and your team's doing everything you can to keep people safe as they set back to the business at hand, and trying to get people back to work if they want to come back. So
Keep doing these. I listened to almost every single one of them. I don't think I've missed many. These have helped keep me in touch.
good. I'm glad to hear it. And of course, I don't know if you were one of the ones that listed last week, but we all voted that James should do the Unity Forum on Thursday.
Can I say something?
What?
I was walking across the parking lot, must have been yesterday, but I think it was yesterday. I saw James and I congratulated him. I said, congratulations. And he said, on what? I said, I voted for you. He said, was there any other options other than me? I said, no, you were the only option.
But here's the thing. 4% of the respondents, if you recall, said no, they didn't think you should do it. And I thought that 4% may have represented James himself, but he said it wasn't. So there must have been somebody out there that was trying to run some interference for him. But no, I asked James because I think he's got a terrific online kind of
Awesome.
presence, even if it's just to sit there dead still and while somebody else is talking. That is very hard to do. But I'm glad you listen, and I'm glad that they've helped you, and I'm glad to hear you guys are all set. Say hi to Kelly for me, will you? And hope that we could all be in some sort of a non-distance, sort of environment at some point. Remember the days of, and then we got to wrap this up, but the days of the Taste of Springs when you used to, be a bodyguard for me and help me move through crowds. And I don't think we're gonna be doing any of that anytime soon.
No, we'll get there. Something will break. I've got positive thoughts going.
Yeah.
But I thank you for having me here.
You're so welcome, and thanks for being such a faithful servant to the organization for so long. Really appreciate having you around. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Okay, you heard it. There we are, another town hall, and with some more information about our transportation and how that's going to be affecting people. So, Greg, I should have asked if there were questions before I let Joe go, because I may not be able to answer them if they're technical.
No, Dan, just a couple specific questions that I forwarded on to the appropriate people.
I'm sorry about that, guys. I usually remember, and it just went out of my head for some reason. Okay, be safe out there, guys. Remember to wear your masks, social distance, even when you feel like you know the person, or don't let your guard down too far. Please, I beg you. We got this. We will get through this together because we can, because we're NuPath. And yeah, I won't see you on Thursday. You'll be Unity Forum will be hosted by James. I know it's going to be a good one. I will listen to it when I get back on the YouTube channel, and I'll see you next Tuesday. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.